So you're playing the game, and each one of you is going back and forth with your normals and trying to play the game, whatever have you. But then you come across a situation, boom, like this, where you're now in the corner and you gotta block out a situation that looks a bit ugly and looks fairly similar to this. What are you supposed to do about this? Right? You're in this situation. If you hold the overhead, you get hit. You hold the low, get hit. If you just decide to block, you don't get any value. If you're just getting hit over and over again, you could try to go for parry. But this is where we're gonna add something called active defense. For those who do not know what active defense is essentially the art of pressing something or using different options to get you out of a certain situation so you don't have to keep holding the same situation over and over again, right? Normally, the typical defensive options are things like you tapping parry, right? Those are some of the ones that you can use. You can use tap parry, right? Or you can just try and block out the situation altogether, you know, down back and then wait for them to do something overtly unsafe, you know, like them going for a situation where they see you right, they get the hit, like so. And instead of going for the throw, they go for a neutral jump. And in the case that they go for the neutral jump, then we can blow them up with an anti-air, where we just essentially blocked out the situation, looked for something, and took advantage of it. That's your typical one. But how do we use something called active defense? Active defense will essentially allow you to kind of interrupt by making a educated decision. And I can't stand when people say that, oh, active defense is just mashing. No, it's not just mashing. It's based off of number one, do you believe that your opponent's gonna go for something 100% real? If you think that your opponent's gonna go for 100% real, then that's when we go for traditional defense. Now, if you feel like your opponent's going to do something slightly fraudulent, then we can take advantage of that, right? So let's say in this instance, I'm certain that he's gonna try and throw me. In this case, I'm going to try an option that is going to try and blow up backdash, right? Now, the whole idea behind it is because if I just allow him to run his paces like usual, if he gets the throw here, it actually naturally sets him up to get this overhead if he does land it, right? And if he doesn't land it, it still blows up and it still gives him the pressure immediately afterwards. So that's kind of the whole thing there. So if I don't want you to get automated guess this situation, then I'm gonna try something, right? Now, naturally, some people might try throw. So in those cases, if I try to mash, I'm just gonna get hit out of it and then put in the exact same situation. Cool. What other options do I have in this instance, right? If I feel really confident in it, then I'm gonna try going for a backdash, either back throw or throw. Now, granted, these are things that are not technical punishes. However, they have value because most of your opponent is looking for is one of two things when this happens. They either look for A, the fact that the throw has gone through, or B, they're looking for the throw tech, right? Both options will just allow them to mitigate the rest of it that's happening, right? If we're able to control that situation and at least make your opponent guess, like, what am I gonna do? Like, am I gonna try and tap parry, right? Am I gonna try and wake up jump? These are all things how we can start implementing different ways to get out of bad situations. If we're not using our defensive options in a more active way as opposed to a traditional way, then what ends up happening is that you end up blocking every situation. Now, you don't really hold it, you hold everything, and then when you hold everything, you get blown up by throw a lot, and then that's when you start trying to throw tech, and then it just makes you overall a lot easier to open up if you don't have these options. Let me show you something a little bit different. So another act of using this sort of active defense is, let's suppose we're in a situation like this. Okay, so he goes for the same sort of string here, right? But instead, we try to use an act of active defense where we try to bust out of the situation. clearly unsuccessful, and then we end up getting blown up for it, right? But here's the thing, when it comes to your traditional defense, obviously DP is an option. However, what if we used a different option to blow them up? So instead of going for an option that gets you blown up like this, if you think that they're gonna go for an option like this, we can then decide to blow it up by using a low forward. Now this is something, once again, if you are fairly certain that they're going to try and bait out a wake up option, which is a traditional defensive option, then you can start taking things into your own hands. Because if you feel like your opponent is going to try and go for a walk back, you can't walk back and block your legs at the same time. So what ends up happening is that if you slightly add a little delay to it, then you'll end up catching your opponent lacking, and you can blow them up and potentially win the entire round just because of this sort of instance. So let me show it one more time. So you slightly delay it so that if they happen to go for an immediate meaty, then you're still blocking. However, if they continue to walk back, you can either A, potentially catch them on a counter hit situation where they're trying to walk back into a button, or you just catch them walking back altogether. And with that being said, if they go for a neutral jump, it does give you slightly, if done correctly, it does give you enough time to, if they go for a neutral jump shimmy, then it does give you enough time to go for light DP as well. So let's talk about how we can implement this using active defense versus traditional defense. The thing about this is that you want to make sure that you are switching between the two pretty fluidly, just because it shows your opponent that, hey, number one, you're going to have to start trying to bait me out. Because if you keep trying to do the traditional thing or keep trying to be sneaky about everything and put me in this situation, I'm going to just burst out, right? It makes your opponent have to think about the way they go about their offense, because they're like, oh shoot, this guy's uncontrollable. A lot of the time people are like, oh shoot, this guy's a masher, he's gonna try and mash out of every situation. Now if I think he's just gonna mash out of a situation, then I'm gonna try to either A, keep things tight, or B, try to go for the shimmy situation, or try to go for a throw, right? We've already talked about the throw situation. When it comes to backdash, even with Cammy, she has a very unique option where if she knows that you're gonna go for an option like that, right, she can definitely go for an up forward and punish it, right? And these are the sorts of things that aids when facing an opponent, because it forces your opponent to have to think about how they're going to control you. And if they're unable to guess on how you're going to respond, then it makes it a lot harder for them to make a decision on offense. A lot of them are just going to say, you know what, I'm going to wait for you to make the mistake, and then I'm going to go for a punish then. You're like, okay, if you're going to wait for me to make a mistake, then all right, then shoot, I'm just going to wait my turn and I'm going to go for my low forward. Right? See how in that instance, even though I got thrown, I only got countered, no punish counter, no nothing, right? If he tries to walk back on that instance, even though I press crushing medium kick, all right, you know what, I took the throw. The worst things can be done, you know what I mean? I'd rather take a throw than, you know, number one, a punish counter throw, or number two, get it shimmied or get hit or whatever have you, right? There's always about managing your resources in these sorts of cases. Now, with that said, I hope that helps you understand a little bit more about how to use active defense in this game versus using traditional defense, which is blocking, and the traditional parry, and on the occasional bust out with EXDP. When you're using options like delayed crouching medium punch, delayed crouching medium kick, delayed crouching jab, these sorts of options, or backdash, or in the unique cases, jump EX dive kick. When you start using those sorts of options, it makes your opponent like, oh shoot, I gotta make sure that whatever I'm deciding to choose is the safest route. And a lot of the time when it's the safest route, doesn't tend to be the most potent route, right? And that's something to keep in mind. Now with that said, any questions?